Okay, let's see. Chapter 1, Scene 2. Professor McCoy slowly opened the door to her cottage. In a large field, he put her hat on her coat hook and just stood there. She took out a pocket watch from her inner pockets. She smiled as she looked at it. It was a reminder of an old friend now gone. She quietly put it away back in her inner coat before taking off her scarf and putting it on a nearby hook. She was a really well-known professor and scholar in the area. She personally taught almost all the teachers and all the professors in the nearby cities and villages. She treated every one of her students with respect and kindness. She took 5 steps before looking at the mirror on the wall. She was a pale-looking woman with a scar over her left eye. It was a long time when she got the scar, but from when and where is something she'd forgotten about. She had a heart stitched into her coat. It was a gift from her daughter, her Mel. She became a nurse and had some children. She smiled as she whispered, "I wonder how Mel is doing these days." She started going up the stairs and straight to her office. Her office was somewhat interestingly decorated. It was somewhat messy and somewhat random in its appearance. She had several photos randomly put on the walls that lined the room. Most of the photos were people she knew personally and cared for at one point or another. She had traveled to a lot of places during her lifetime. She also had a granddaughter named Susan and a grandson named Tom. They visited her a few times during the years, but never stayed long. It's probably for the best, she whispered as she grabbed a book from one of her shelves in the office. She paused as she looked at the book for a moment. The Guide to the Darkened Forest, Tips and Routes to Avoid by Joseph Pearson. I wonder what he's been up to, she whispered as she opened the first page. He was always a small, quiet one in the corner. Never thought he would travel to the dangerous places and live to tell the tale. She knew him as a student at a local college. He now writes about places all across the globe. It was an interesting choice, to say the least. He wasn't the type to seek out danger, yet here he was, a few years later. It was after school. She smiled as she read the first few pages quietly to herself. She still makes few errors, as always, she thought, as she read the first few paragraphs. End of chapter 1, scene 2. Chapter 1, scene 3. It was somewhat calm as James walked through the crime scene files. It was depressing in a way as he skimmed the files for the third time. He paused as he laid the files onto his desk. His gaze went from the files to the young girl sitting opposite him. It was his first year on the job, and out of all the cases he has done, this one was the most depressing. The young girl sat there, looking at her shoes. She was about 10 years old or so. She wore a light blue dress splattered with lots of blood. She had some spots of blood on her face and a few small spots on her black hair. She sat there quietly with her head down as he looked at her. The report stated that a bomb exploded, taking out a large part of the street. was found under her mother's dead body. She was passed out as she lay under her dead mother. Lay under her dead mother. He watched as she quietly held her back a few tears. He knew a child only cried out if they were hurt or wanted attention. That was worse when they were crying silently. Look at the photos of the crime scene for the second time. The explosive was set under the streets and was set to detonate when the area was busy. The reports state that whoever planted it knew the times when and where it would cause the most damage. The street was ripped apart. Bodies were ripped into pieces, and most of the photos reminded him of his experiences during the war. The notes of the investigation stated that the person or persons involved had used a small explosive charge, which by itself was not capable of large structural damage, but due to the area it was planted, the charge caused too many secondary issues. It was the only attack that it wasn't the only attack that happened this week. There were 3 or other attacks in 2 other cities. The city of Fox it was targeted by chemical weapons. A large busy city living center was covered in unknown airborne chemicals. The effects of the chemicals affected any living creature in a 5-mile radius. The results were 40 dead men, women, and children. There were 20 or so bodies of dead seagulls that were in the port as well as nearby every fish within a 5-mile radius. The attack was last week, and now there were 2 bombings in 2 different cities. One of the bombs planted was inside a parked car, which took out 30 or 40 people in one go. This attack was claimed by a religious cult who believed in the end days. They contacted your father, your uncle. He said he was going to take custody of you until we find out where your father is. She looked up at him and then just went back to looking at her shoes. We tried to contact your father, but the military says it's classified and out of national security. He looked up at the door as a young police officer quietly entered. Mr. Connor, Amanda's aunt and uncle are here. Thank you. I will see them in the lobby in 5 minutes with Amanda. Very well, sir, said the officer as she walked out the door. He placed the files in a drawer and went with Amanda to see her uncle and he noticed how quiet she was as they walked into the lobby. Chapter 1, Scene 3. End of Chapter 1, Scene 3.